we're going to get started. Thank you so much. The restrooms are right through the hallway, just around the first pole there. You can use the restroom if you need to. We are so excited that you're here tonight. I'm really excited to see all your faces. Welcome to Gilead Healing Center.
Is this working? Yes? We're not ready to start yet, are we? Awesome. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, that sounds good. It's a bunch of beautiful people here tonight. That's amazing. How many of you here have never been to Gilead before, by a show of hands, unless you have a frozen shoulder? Like a little bit higher. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. If you've never been here, this is our 20th anniversary here at Gilead. This place was built back in 2004. And the purpose of Gilead was to for people to have a second chance, so they could come here for healing. So if you've never been here, when you walk into the place on the right side, we have a prayer team. Yes. We have healing rooms on Tuesday night. We also have Christian counselors. We have chiropractors, nutritionists, medical doctors, massage therapists. And so we have the whole array of this idea of having spirit, soul, and body healing, right? So if you've never been here, people can come here any time of the week. They can call to be prayed for. They can be coming into this place to worship if they choose to. It's just an amazing place. So welcome if you've never been here. And if you have, well, welcome again. I know some of you have seen you like a couple hundred times, so I'm familiar with your face. And that's awesome that you're here. So before we start, I'm going to have all of you here standing up just to make sure here that I'm going to warm up your legs. James is going to be the first one. Come on, you're going to lead the show. Everybody come on up. Come on, everybody come on up. Let's go. Let's do it. You can do it. I'm not going to have you do any kind of workouts or anything, but I want you to get up. I just want to make sure I have the right information for the right people, right? The right information for the right people. I want to see who's going to be the last man stand or the last lady. Are you ready? How many of you here, James, you need to stand up. You're not allowed to sit yet. You're probably going to be the first one to sit, but, right? How many of you here so I want you to be thinking about this here for a minute. How many of you here, either yourself or somebody that you know has been affected by heart disease? If one of you here, it's either yourself, somebody that you know, I want you to go ahead and sit down, right? Well, I'm not going to have to work really hard tonight. How many of you here that you know somebody, either yourself or somebody that you know, that's been affected by cancer? Go ahead and have a seat. So I want you to look around the room right now, right? And you see that there's 3 people left. And I like to point out to people and say to them, right? And this is what I say to you tonight. Really what I want to say to you is one is enough is enough. Think about that for a minute. You may have a seat. Right? One is enough is enough. You can have a seat, young man. You can have a seat, young lady. Thank you. You're going to have a special prize at the end, the 3 of you. Right? By the time usually I say heart disease and cancer, everybody is down. Or if I had another one, diabetes, for sure everybody's down. Right? So what I want to say to you tonight is it depends, as my energy goes up or down as we go here, but in the next 30 minutes or so, right, maybe 45, I want to share with you what I believe is the most effective, natural, and powerful way to be healthy and to stay healthy while minimizing the deadly effect of chronic illnesses, like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and just name it, right, just to name a few. And then also at the end is to give you an opportunity to give you an opportunity to do something about it. Because the objective here tonight, if you've been here, I know you've heard that before, but it's worth repeating. The objective is, it's not to have a jacuzzi experience, right? A jacuzzi experience is, you get into the jacuzzi, it feels good, and then when you get out, the experience is done, right? Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're like, oh, I just can't wait to jump in my hot tub today. versus, having a different experience that's going to be long lasting, right? Meaning that you're only not going to just get information, but with information leads to taking action. And then when you take action, then you have transformation, right? Are you guys okay with that? Right? I don't want you to just sit there just like a log and you're like, somebody just dragged me in here tonight. Some of you might not want to be here, and that's okay, right? But hopefully by the time we're all said and done, there's something that, you will do with it. That's really where my heart is tonight, is for you to get something out of it. Because if I were to ask any one of you here tonight and say, do you think that we live in a healthy country? What would you say? Right? Even if you don't know much about health, right? Most people would say no. So that's the reason why, if I were to ask you the second question and say, how many of you here tonight, in the next 12 months, you'd like to be healthier than you are now? How many of you, by show of hands? Right? Half of you, you're just too sick to raise your hand or something. Right? Just kidding. Now, some of you here, you're sitting here tonight and you've been here before, or maybe you've been here many times. Maybe you've heard me speak, because I've been in practice now for 25 years. And I've been repeating a lot of the same things, because when you're standing on the truth about health, you're going to repeat a lot of the same thing because it's true and it never changes. But my goal here is for you to, have a greater understanding, not just to hear what I have to say to you, but I want you to understand it so then you can ultimately take action for it. I was born and raised, last Thursday, I flew home to my hometown in Montreal, Canada, which is about 630 miles east from here. My son and I, we just flew home for my mother's birthday. My mother turned 76 years old. She didn't know I was coming. And when we pulled into the driveway, I told my son, I said, we're not going to go knock at the door because she might have a heart attack, right? She's 76 years old. I said, we're going to call her first, right? So we called her, and this thing just rang about 4 or 5 times, and then finally she answered the phone. And then I just had talked to her at 6 p.m., right, on my way to the airport, but she doesn't know that, right? And then she finally figured out that we were in the driveway. So she was kind of shocked. And then when she found out my son was with me, of course, that was the cherry there on the Sunday. It was way more important than me, but it was kind of a fun time. So all of this here to tell you, my mom turned 76, May 16, 1948, right? And my mom and my dad, when I was a little boy, I've got 4 siblings. I got 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And when my mom and my dad married, she was 17 years old. And she married, my father was 22 at the time. And when they married, my father never told my mom that he had a problem with his blood sugar. So then what happened is, shortly after they married, my mother found my dad on the ground. She thought he was dead. She rushed him to the hospital. And by the time they got to the hospital, he's in a deep coma. She doesn't know that because she doesn't know what's going on with him. And then they admitted him. And then 3 days later, by God's grace, my father came out of the hospital and they told him that he was a diabetic. And then that for the rest of his life, he's going to have to give himself a shot of insulin. So at age 22, my father every morning at 6 a.m. would give himself a shot of insulin. And then in the afternoon, when his blood sugar would start dropping down, he would start eating cake, cookies, candies, and ice cream. Did that every day, right? Just so he wouldn't pass out. My father was also a smoker. He smoked 100 cigarettes a day. And if you've never smoked, you don't know what that means, but he had like 4 packs a day. And it was like every single day, wake up in the morning with a cigarette in his mouth. And it was just like all day until he just hit the pill at night. By the time my dad turned to be 30 years old, he developed this condition called peripheral neuropathy. Some of you might have it, or you might know people that have it, but having peripheral neuropathy, how that looked like to my dad is from his knees down, he could not feel his legs whatsoever. You could literally take a knife and just jab him in his legs and he would start bleeding and he did not even know what was happening to him. Within 5 years, my father turned to be like, by the time he was 35 years old, he's 3/4 blind. And the reason for that is because when you don't monitor your blood sugar properly, then what happens is your optic nerve is going to die. You're going to start, you won't see, right? So he was going blind. So at the age of 35, I remember that clearly. A matter of fact, I had like a flashback when I was home a couple of days ago, because when I left yesterday morning, it was 4:30 a.m., right? And there's light out because in Montreal, right, the light comes up really early and the sun comes out at 4:30 a.m. and I can see that. My dad would come into the bedroom and say, son, it's time to get up. And I was 5 years old at the time. And they say, you know what? You're going to be driving the tractor. I'm going to tell you where to go because I can't see. And in less than 1 year, my dad, by the time he's 36 years old, he's completely blind. And because he couldn't work anymore, then he got depressed, lost 40 pounds really quickly. Then he was just skin and bone. And then what happened is he was confined to the house. And then what that meant to him is he was in bed 20 hours a day. And then he would just go from one position to another. He started to develop bed sores. When it first started, it was about the size of a quarter. And then within 6 months, the quarter was like this big around. You could literally see all the layer of the flesh all the way down to the bone. And the doctor would come in once a week, which back in those days, the doctor would go do house call, right? Don't get to see that much anymore. The doctor would come in, go right into the bedroom, and then all 5 kids would be right around the bed, around the doctor. And then when he would pull that piece of, tape off of his right hip, right, and that piece of gauze there, it was all yellow and nasty. He was infected, right? And then they would just clean that up, put some new ointment, and then a week later, then the doctor would come back and do the same thing again. Then what happened is July 12, 1982, my father turned to be 40 years old. And at the age of 40, as you can imagine, he was not doing a whole lot because he was in bed about 20 hours a day. He would come into the living room. Somebody would spoon feed him because he couldn't take care of himself. And then he would go right back into the bedroom. And then within 3 months, by the time September rolled around, one day he wasn't feeling well. So my mother called the ambulance. And when the ambulance came in, the paramedic just go right up, the stairs with a stretcher. They go right in front of us kids. They go into the bedroom. By the time they go into the bedroom, they look back at my mom. And then they ask my mom, they're like, listen, we need to take him in. And at that time, my mom said, whatever needs to be done, because she didn't know what to do with him. So they load him up on the stretcher. They roll him back out right in front of us, right? And my mother is right there in the corner. I've got my 2 brothers next to me, my 2 sisters next to me, right? I was 9 years old at the time. My brother was 8 years old, 7 years old, 12 years old or so. And then my other sister, 14. My mother had just turned 35. And I looked at my mom and I said to my mom, I said, where are they taking Dad? And my mom did not answer. And then I asked her again, I said, where are they taking Dad? Right? And she didn't answer. This is when I quickly realized as a young man, I was 9 years old, that being a good provider was not the most important thing. You see, I've been in this town now for 25 years and I've been taking care of thousands of people. And what I notice is when people lose their health, they don't know how to get it back. And when people have their health, they don't know how to keep it. Think about that for a minute. When people lose their health, they don't know how to get it back. And when you have your health, people don't know how to get it, how to keep it. So I want you to think about that for a minute. So we started today by me asking you this question and to say, hey, do we live in a healthy country? Obviously, the answer is no, right? But if I say to you, and I follow this up with the next question and say, why do you think that is? What are you thinking? Why do you think that is? What's that? Money. What else? Lifestyle. What else? We eat horribly. Okay. Stress. Yeah, people don't have much of that, right? Yeah, for sure. I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, in my professional opinion, there's 2 main things that happen to people, and this is really important. 2 main things, 2 main reasons. Number 1 is, right, people don't want to take responsibility for their health. And let me explain myself, because I ask this question a lot, and I've asked the same question for 20 years, 20 plus years. And when I ask people, I'm like, who's responsible for your health? 99% of the time, people are like, it's me, right? But now you have to be asking question, is my action reflect that? And what I mean by this is if you have a problem and you go to the doctor and you're expecting the doctor to fix your problem, right? That's not being responsible for your health. Do you follow me? Right? So I want you to understand that being responsible for your health, right? Today I was talking to Bob, and I was telling him, I'm like, listen, there's either the pain of discipline or there's the pain of regret, right? There's only one of those 2 things that's going to happen in your lifetime. Either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, right? You can either just go at the end and say, I should have, could have, would have. Or today, you can start, on this journey to do a little bit at a time so you don't have to get to the end, or you don't have to get 3/4 into this and then you say, I should have, could have, or would have. Do you follow me? Right? Number 2 here on this list, number 1 is taking responsibility for your health. Number 2, right, is to have the right information. The right information is kind of important. About a few months ago, I was in Dallas, Texas. I was at a conference, and one of the keynote speakers was an AI guy that he's talking about artificial intelligence. Now, all of you here, I'm not going to ask you your opinion about AI because it really doesn't matter. Some people like it, some people doesn't. But I'm going to tell you something right now that is quite powerful. So he's starting his speech, and as he's starting the speech, he just stopped talking, and there's right there on that board, right, there's a 5-minute video content that he's talking about the stuff that he's selling. And when it's all said and done, he asked the question, he's like, who do you think this is? And everybody said, well, that's you. He's like, that's not me. That's my double. He's like, I've never done that. He's like, matter of fact, I'm going to show you how I did it. And then when it's all said and done, he did stuff like that for an hour. It was like mind-blowing. But when it's all said and done, he says, you better be careful who you're listening to. You better be careful of the information that you're taking in that you think that it's the truth. They were doing studies on the level of trust with the government. And they were asking the question, right, compared to 10 years ago, do we trust the government more or we trust the government less today? What do you think the answer was? Well, of course, right? So you got to be careful about the information you get. So I always tell people, I'm like, number 1, taking responsibility for your health. Number 2, right, is you got to have the right information. The right information is you got to know, right? I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard to maneuver through that. If you've been through COVID, maybe you know a little bit about that, right? Lots of confusion. But I want you to understand, if you have a brand new map of Michigan, right? It's brand new. They just made it today, just finalized today, came out of the print shop. And you're in the middle of New York City and you're trying to find your way around, right? Even if the map is perfect, it's just been printed out, right? But it's Michigan and you're in New York, it's going to be hard to find your way around. Would you agree with that? Yes? Right? You got to have the right information in order to get to where you want to be. So back in 1984, normal cholesterol was 334. 334. Maybe you might want to write this down. 334. Today on your lab test, if you had a lab test in the past few months, right? They want your cholesterol to be below 150. If you have heart disease, it's more like below 100, right? That's okay if you're losing your mind. That's okay. We got pills for that, right? That's also okay if you're just tired all the time. We got a pill for that. It's okay if you can't sleep at night. That's okay. We got a pill for that. That's okay. I mean, if you sleep too much, we got a pill for that too, right? So I want you to think of this here. So since 1984, we've been told that we need to eat less fat. So we've been eating less fat, but yet we're fatter than we've ever been. I want you to think about that for a minute. We were supposed that when you stop eating fat, you're not supposed to have heart disease, but yet we have more heart disease than we've ever had before. Right? We have more cancer than we've ever had. We have the best doctor, the best nurse, the best hospital, the best money, the best of everything, but yet our health sucks. Do you follow me? So you want to make sure that the information you're getting, it's the right information. That's really important. I didn't want to spend too much time on that, but this is that important today. Understanding the information you're getting to be able to make sure that you know what the truth is, right? That we know that the truth will set you free, but you got to have the truth, right? So in the scripture, in the book of Hosea 4:6, it says, my people will perish because of a lack of, right? A lack of knowledge. People don't know what they don't know. I want you to understand that, right? So this leads me here tonight to, there's this thing called health, right? If I ask all of you, say in the next 12 months, you want to be healthier, all of you are going to say yes. How do I know that? Because I've asked the same question for 25 years. I've never had anybody saying no, right? People don't say, oh, I really want to be sicker in 12 months. People don't say that. They're like, well, of course I want to be healthier. I'm like, okay, well, show me what does that mean though? Right? So there's 3 different paradigms of health, right? How many? 3. There's 3 different paradigms of health. Paradigm means, how do you define health today for you, right? All the question that you're going to be asking from this point on is going to be based on how you define health for you, right? So how does Dennis define health? How does Lois define health? How you define health for yourself, it's going to be like all the question you're going to be asking from this point on for Carol, it's going to be based on how she defines health for herself. So what that means is there's some people that there's three different paradigms. So number one is this is the paradigm of where most people are at today, right? So you go see the doctor, you have symptoms, and then the doctor is going to do what? Right? He's going to get out his pad of paper and he's going to give you a prescription, going to give you a pill for it, right? And then if the pill is making your symptom better or make your numbers look better, we're going to say you are what? Yeah, you're doing great because your numbers look good, right? So you could be taking a blood pressure pill. Your blood pressure is 200 over 150. You take the blood pressure pill, it goes back to 120 over 80. And then we'll say, hey, your numbers look great. But is the problem still there, though? It's like me telling you tonight that, you have headaches because you don't have enough aspirin in your brain. Is that it? Do you have acid reflux because you just don't have enough Tums in your belly? But yet people do that every day. They never question it. They're like, when I take the Tums, I feel better. And I'm like, oh, that's good. But would you not want to find out what's causing the problem, though? Because if you don't know what's causing the problem, you can't get the solution for it. Does that make sense? So in this paradigm of health, right, which is really a paradigm of sickness, is like what we do is we just like our definition of health for people that are here. They're like, hey, if my numbers look good, or if my symptoms are better, right, that means I'm healthy. Do you follow me? Right? So if you define health like that, this is not working too well. Because how do we know that? Out of 40 industrialized countries, we're ranked number 37. Right? So how's that working out for you? Not so good. So that's number one. Now, some of you here tonight might be like, oh, Dr. Jean-Guy, I don't do that. Right? Matter of fact, I don't even go see the doctor. I don't even like them, right? I just go to the store, and I go get some natural remedy, right? And I'm going to take some oil and I'm going to sniff it when I don't feel good, right? And whatever symptoms I have and whatever they tell me to take. Or if I have a head cold, they're going to give me some homeopathic or some nutraceutical. And then when I feel good, then after that, I'm just going to be like, okay, well, I'm done now. I feel fine. Right? Or some of you, I know you've never done that. There's none of you that have ever done that. But I've heard once or twice, right, that a person's got their neck is killing them. And they're like, can I just go to this chiropractor this one time? He's going to crack me and I never have to go back again. This guy was so good. 20 years later, I've never had to go back again. Sure, you've never heard that. James is laughing. He's like, maybe that was me. Right? And then, or maybe you have 20 pounds to lose. You lose the 20 pounds, and then you go on vacation. You put your Speedo on. You look great. And then you come back, and then you do the same thing as what you were doing before. Right? What happened is when you're in this paradigm of health right here, right, you might not like to take drugs because you don't like them, but the outcome is going to be the same. The outcome is going to be the same. Because what happened is when you feel fine, right, you just think that you're fine. And I want you to know today that, ladies and gentlemen, is, heart disease and cancer, those are the top two diseases that there is in this country right now. 5 out of 6 people either are going to die from heart disease or cancer. Did you know that? Right? There's 562,000 people that die from heart disease every single year. And there's 700,000 people that die from cancer every single year. 5 out of 6 people in this country right now, they're gonna either die from heart disease or cancer. Right? 5 out of 6. How many of you would like to be the one that it doesn't happen to? Raise your hand by show of hands unless you got a frozen shoulder. Come on, James. Right? He's like, yeah, sign me up for that. Right? But yet those two diseases, now listen to me, those two diseases by themselves, heart disease, 80% of the time, the number one sign of heart disease is a heart attack, meaning that people don't even know they have it. Is that possible? A person could have stage 4 cancer and they don't know. Is that possible? Could a person have cancer? They don't know. Happens all the time. Right? So you think it's wise for you, right, to define health by saying, health to me is when I feel fine. Do you think it's wise to think that? I'm just asking a question for a friend. You follow me? Because if you don't ask the question, you're not going to know. And if you've never asked yourself the question, you're not going to know because you're going to continue doing exactly what you're doing. So now we get into the last paradigm of health, right? Which is really where I think that true health is. In this paradigm here, everything has to do with being the best version of yourself that you can be. It doesn't matter if you have symptoms or no symptom, right? It doesn't matter. I don't want you to raise your hands, but how many of you here believe that when you have a fever that you're sick? That was a trick question. Don't raise your hand. Don't do that. Right? No, you're not sick. I want you to understand that when you have a fever, when there's bugs in your body, when you have an immune challenge in your body, the way that God made your body to work is like some of those bugs, you can only kill them at a very specific temperature. And if you don't increase the core temperature, you won't be able to kill them. Do you see what I'm saying? Right? So when you have a virus, but yet you don't let the temperature go up, you're never going to be able to kill the virus. So what do people say? They're like, well, yeah, I was taking Tylenol, I've been doing this for a week, and then virus, the core temperature just keep coming. I always have a fever, and it keeps coming back. I'm like, yeah, your body is just trying to take care of the bug, and you just won't let it happen. Right? Now, don't raise your hand, but I'm going to ask you another good one. Are you ready? Ashley is like, yeah, I'm not going to fall for this one. Right? I said, how many of you here believe that, a person is sick when they have diarrhea? Right? They're like, well, of course I'm sick. Kids comes in, they're like, well, Dr. Jean, I wasn't here yesterday because I was sick. I'm like, what happened? And then they're like, well, I had diarrhea. I'm like, well, that's great. And they look at me with big eyes. They're like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, your parents told you were sick, but I'm telling you that you're healthy. Because it's the wrong paradigm, right? It's all how you think. In the paradigm of health, right, you understand how the body works, so you know how what the body wants to do for you to be healthy. Do you follow me? Say yes. Maybe you don't, but that's okay. Just say yes, right? So in this paradigm, right, it's like there's three things that needs to happen. Is you gotta move well, you gotta eat well, you gotta think well, and then you gotta make sure things are functioning properly. Do you follow me? I want you to repeat this. I want you to think well, move well, eat well, and then your body's got to function properly. You got it? Right? So now I'm going to define that. What does that mean? Right? Did you know that 90% of your brain nutrition has to do with proper motion of your joints? There's a Nobel Prize winner back in the 80s that found that 90% of your brain nutrition has to do with proper motion of your joints. So that means that if you're sitting in the car and you're driving places because you're working, part of your work is you're just driving the car all day, or maybe you work behind a computer for 8 hours a day or 10 hours or 12 hours, right? Guess what happened? There is absolutely no movement. If you're sitting at the house and you're on the couch and you're watching TV and you're moving your eyes from right to left, that's not exercising. Okay? Do you understand that? Right? You can be watching like hockey games and football games and all those games that you want, and you're like, oh yeah, that was great. But that is not exercising, right? 90% of your brain nutrition has to do with proper motion of your joints. If your joints don't move properly, then your brain is starving. So we have this epidemic today of neurodegenerative disease. You know what that is? Neurodegenerative disease, like people that have the early dementia, Alzheimer, Parkinson, right? How many of you here want to sign up for that program? Well, if you sit all day, it's for sure it's going to happen, right? So you got to move well. You got to move. And then number 2, right, is you got to eat well. Eating well is if you are on the SAD diet. Do you know what the SAD diet is? The SAD diet is the standard American diet. You know, the food pyramid? If you look on Dr. Google and you type in the food pyramid and you follow that, for sure you're going to die early. For sure you will die early. Right? Because when you're a standard American diet, what you do is you eat a lot of calories. They're empty calories. You eat a lot of cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta. Right? You have a lot of crackers. You have a lot of bread. You have a lot of junk. Right? And that's why people eat all day, because they're like, hey, that's no big deal. You can eat sugar all day. It's not going to hurt you. Right? The average American right now will eat somewhere between 150 to 180 pounds of sugar per year. Right? I want you to think of that, 150 to 180 pounds of sugar per year, right? So when you eat cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta, and you follow the food pyramid, right, either things that are sugar, they break down into sugar, for sure. We are creating like an army of people that's going to need some pills later, right? Because now you have high blood pressure, no problem, we got a pill for that. You have high cholesterol, we got a pill for that. Your blood sugar is high, we got a pill for that. You're depressed, we got a pill for that. You're too happy, we got a pill for that too. You can't sleep at night, we got a pill for that. You're anxious, we got a pill for that. Right? You got a female problem like PCOS, we got a pill for that. You got cysts, we got a pill for that. right? Your cycle don't work right. We got a pill for that too. Think about that for a minute, right? You're like, Dr. Jean-Guy, I'm just discouraged right now. I'm like, you should, right? You should. They're trying to get you, right? You got to be careful who you're watching, who you're listening to. So you got to move well. You got to eat well, right? You got to eat food. And then you got to think well, right? Thinking well is pretty amazing. We've known for a long time that you can create your own disease with your mind, right? So if you're around people that are raining on your parade, they should be like, out. If it's your family member, out, right? Some of you, your family members, just ran on your parade. They shouldn't be around you, right? You should limit the amount of time you spend with them. Because what happened is we already know that you can create disease with your mind, right? You can create disease with your mind, but you can also create health with your mind, which is really fascinating to me, right? This is just a side note. I wasn't supposed to tell you this, but I want to tell you anyway. I was in another meeting in Texas. I don't know why all the meetings are there, but for some reason I was there just a couple weeks ago, and they have this biohacking, meeting. So biohacking is like, what can you do to the body to just get the body to be better faster? And there's this guy there. How many of you here understand when I use the word mitochondria? Do you know what that is? Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cells. Okay, so I'm going to explain what that means in plain English, right? That there's 70 trillion cells in your body. How many? 70 trillion cells. Within your cells, there's this thing called the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cells. That's what creates energy, right? You follow me? So this guy says to me, right? I'm just started talking to him. He was really interesting. So I started talking to him for about an hour, and I said, hey, I want you to tell me here, how do you get this mitochondria to just like to get healthier? Because now they have those blood tests. They're like $700. You do a couple of drops of blood, and they're going to test your mitochondria, and they're going to tell you the health of the mitochondria. And if I was you, I wouldn't worry about testing your cholesterol, because you know what? It just means nothing. You're much better off to have a test of your mitochondria to see if they're healthy or not, if you're going to be healthy or not, versus not, right? Than having your blood test at your doctor's office going to tell you how your cholesterol is. But I'll tell you more about that later. So anyway, so here's the mitochondria. So here's 4 little drops. And then the guy says to me, now listen, right? The guy says to me, he's like, listen, when I go to those meetings there in California, they have those meetings of this guy. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. And then when we go to those meetings, right, we test people's mitochondria on day 1, and then they stay here for 1 week. They just think about themselves getting better. It doesn't matter the disease they have. They have ALS, they have this, they have heart disease, they have cancer, they have all the diseases there is. They're all documented. They do PET scan on their brain. They do their mitochondria testing before they start. And then at the end of 7 days, they retest the mitochondria, and guess what happened? It's healed. It completely gets better. Make people thinking about they're just getting better. Why is that important? Because there's people, not you, James, but there's people that, I never ask people, how are you doing, Pete? I don't say that because I don't want people to complain, right? This is like, it's a trick, by the way. If you come to my office, I'm never going to say, hey, Cheryl, how are you doing? I just don't say that. I'm trained not to say that. I would say, hey, Pete, that's great to see you today. This color there looks great on you. Because I know how you speak to yourself and how you speak to people, it matters, right? That was a side note. I got off track here, sorry. Right? Okay, so you gotta move well, you gotta eat well, you gotta think well, and then you gotta make sure things are functioning properly. How do we know that? Right? There's 70 trillion cells in your body. How many? Right? In medical dictionary, it says that if you're, when a person is healthy, they have 100% function, right? When a person is healthy, according to the medical dictionary, it says health is when you have 100% function, right? And it goes on to say physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually, and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So what that means is health is when you have 100% function. What controls all the function in your body? Talk to me, right? Ryan says, I'm not going to say it because I'm shy, but it's right up here. It's called your brain, right? It's called your brain. Would you agree with that? Right? Your brain is in charge of controlling 70 to 100 trillion cells in your body. Is that like kind of amazing? Your brain is in charge of controlling 70 to 100 trillion cells in your body at any given time. So for your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, your stomach to digest food, the information has to go from your brain through your spinal cord, out the nerves to every organ, tissue, cells in your body. How about that? Right? Did you know that you have to go from 100% function now, 100% function all the way down to 60% before you start having any kind of sign of symptoms, right? Or for a person to feel it. Right? You have to go from 100% function all the way down to 60% before you're going to start having any kind of signs of symptom. So that means that you're going to have at least, right, 40% of sickness, death, or disease in your body before you start feeling it. How many of you here want to wait that long? That's why you don't wait until you have symptoms, because it makes no sense. Right? Why would you do that? So when people were like, well, I'm fine, right? Men would say, not James. Dennis would not say that. But there's people out there that are like, well, if it's not broken, let's not fix it. It doesn't hurt. Right? And I say, hey, this is the stupidest, whatever that thing is, that I've heard all day. That's silly. If you're truly into health, you wouldn't be saying those things. Does that make sense? Are you tracking with me here? Right? So the brain is in charge of controlling 70 trillion cells in your body. Right? So what happened is when you have damage into your spine and nervous system because of trauma, the trauma can be physical, chemical, emotional, right? Any kind of trauma. It doesn't matter what that is. Then what happened is you can have stress in your body. How many of you here don't have any stress by a show of hands? Right? That was a trick question. Keep your hands down. Right? Of course people have stress. So then what happened is when you have damage to your spine and nervous system, what happened is now the brain will have a hard time to communicate to the rest of the body or from the rest of your body back into the brain, right? Remember, your brain is like garbage in, garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out, right? So if the information coming in is crooked, right, the information going out is going to be crooked as well. Do you follow me? Right? So the output of your brain is completely dependent on what's coming in. Now, what did I say to you? What's the percentage? Right? What's the percentage of information coming to your brain that is dependent on your joints? It's like 90% of your brain nutrition has to do with proper function of your joints. Now, your finger are your joints, yes, right? Your elbow is your joint. Your knee is a joint, yes. Your foot is a joint, yes. But you know the one that has the greatest impact on your brain? Do you know? Say no. Very good, right? I'm going to tell you, right? It's the top two bone in your neck right here. It's called the atlas and the axis. The top two bone in your neck have the greatest impact. There's the most mechanoreceptor per square inch in your entire body that has the greatest impact on brain function. Do you think that's important? Right? Now, like maybe a few of you here know this, but most of you probably don't, right? They're like, yeah, I would only go to chiropractor when my back hurts. I'm like, who cares about your back hurting? Who cares? I mean, I really do care. But what I want you to know, right, there's a much greater impact on a person's health, right, when your brain and nervous system function properly. Do you follow me? That's the reason why a person could eat some amazing organic food. Now listen, for you organic people, right? If you were to eat some amazing organic food, and let's say that, you have damage to your spine and nervous system right here in the middle of your back, right between your shoulder blades, and it's smashing the nerve going to your stomach. What would happen to your stomach when you put this amazing organic food in? Do you think your stomach would be able to assimilate it and break it down and to be able to do what it's supposed to do? Yes or no? The answer is no. Right? Matter of fact, when Kim came in, this was like 18 plus years ago, she comes in on a Saturday morning. She says, hey, Dr. Jangi, can you adjust me right here? And I said to her, I'm like, who's the doctor here? Is that me or you? She's like, oh, sorry, I just moved in from Canada. And guess what? I've been going to the chiropractor from the time I was a little girl. And when I have acid reflux, I get adjusted right here. And the acid reflux goes, boom, it's gone. Right? Because she understood that, hey, if your brain cannot send the right message at the right time, your brain is sending the message for your stomach to produce hydrochloric acid. And when it doesn't, then you have this thing called acid reflux, or you have GERD, or you have indigestion. But that's okay. Go see the doctor. He's going to give you a pill for that. Right? Because, of course, you must be born with just a lack of pill in your belly. Right? You don't have enough like Prilosec, or you don't have enough like Tums, or you don't have enough proton inhibitors. And then that's okay, because then we know we're just going to stop absorbing the iron and calcium. Then you get a hip replacement. No big deal, right? It's only a hip replacement, right? It's no big deal. You're going to be iron deficient. You'll be tired all the time. No big deal for that too. We got a pill for that, right? And then What about for you exercise people? Are you ready? So let's say that you need to go to your exercise because Dr. Jean-Guy said so. You go on your 5-mile run, and let's say that you have damage to your spine and nervous system right here at the bottom of your neck, and it's crushing the nerve going to your heart. What would happen to your heart when you go on your run? Would your heart have to work less or have to work harder? Well, of course, you have to work harder. It's called congestive heart failure. Who wants that? Nobody wants that, but people don't know, right? I've got those little brown guys that are coming to the office. You know what the brown guys are? The UPS guy, right? All the little brown boys there. You know, those are amazing people, right? They're like, Dr. Jean-Guy, I exercise a lot. I'm like, yeah, but you do the same thing all day for the past 20 years. You're a mess, right? And then Victoria, 16 years old when she came to the office, right? She's got headaches, which is common that we see people with headaches. According to Dr. Denise, my wife, she's always right. Yes. She says that 100% of the headache cases that she's ever had, she's always helped them, 100%. I mean, I go with 99, but she goes for 100. But we do like pretty good with headaches, just so you know, right? That's not uncommon. So Victoria comes in, she's 16 years old when she comes in, right, with her parents, and her chief complaint is she's got headaches. And then we take x-rays of her spine, we do an evaluation of her, and we started on her care, and after 4 weeks, you know, the headaches, you know, they're better, they're gone, right? And then the mother comes in one day, and she's started talking to me, and the mother started crying. It kind of felt uncomfortable, and people cry in front of me, don't know why, I just take them in a room, right? I'm like, either I'm in trouble, or we're going to celebrate something. Right? So I get into the room, and then she's right next to me, and she says, Dr. Jean-Guy, there's one thing we did not tell you because we didn't think you could help. Victoria had been diagnosed with clinical depression, right? Every time she'd come into the house, right, she'd go right into the bedroom. She never talked to us. But now, a little bit at a time, week 1, week 2, week 3, now she comes into the house for the first time since she's been diagnosed with clinical depression, right? She comes in, and now she comes and talks to her parents. It's never happened before. Think about that for a minute. Right? This area right here, right? This has a huge impact on focus, cognition, concentration, right? This area is really important, right? So that's what happened to Victoria. So you could be eating well, but if you eat well but things don't function properly, are you going to be able to maximize from eating well? Yes or no? The answer is no. You could be moving well like those little UPS guy. They're just moving a lot, right? But if you're moving a lot and you do the same thing over and over again, you do this for 20, 30 years, are you doing yourself some good or some bad? What do you think? Probably there's some of those things that you're doing is probably going to wear your body down because the tires are not aligned properly. Would you agree with that? Right? And then if you're around people that are raining on your parade, you know, that's going to be a problem. There is no way a person can get better, right? When you're around people that are just being negative all day long, there's no way. And then on top of that, you got to make sure things are functioning properly. Does that make sense? Yes or yes? The answer was yes, right? So this leads me to, I always tell people, and I want to tell you tonight that, hey, I don't know if somebody dragged you here or not, but I just want to tell you that when it comes down to your health, you can do whatever you want because that's your health. Right? Would you agree with that? That's your health. You can do whatever you want with it. But just imagine here for a minute that you don't do anything about the problems that you have. And you just keep doing what you keep doing. What kind of outcome you think you're going to have? The same, the exact same. The definition of insanity is to do something over and over again, expecting something different, right? Taking more drugs doesn't make people healthier, right? Being on a standard American diet is not going to make you any healthier. Not moving is not going to make you any healthier. If you don't change something, right, the outcome is going to be the same. So I want you to know tonight that the outcome is going to be the same if you keep doing the same thing, right? I just want you to know that. That's a side note. However, right, not doing anything about the problems you have, you wait for another, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 months, you think you're going to be better or worse? Take a guess. It's going to be worse, right? It doesn't matter. People are like, oh, I'm going to be fine. No, you won't. Things get worse. They don't get better. If you don't do anything about it, it's going to get worse. 100% of the time. It's not just magically say, oh, it's just going to get better. It won't. It's impossible, right? For most people's life, with their health, it's like a freight train. They're going 100 miles an hour the wrong way. You got to slow it down, stop it, go the other way. Do you follow me? Right? So you don't do anything, it's going to get worse. Knowing that something could have been done, right? So you can take it into a different direction. Some of you here tonight, I would dare to say you have goals, you have dreams. Maybe some of you don't, but if we spend like an hour together, I'm sure we could find something that you really want. And I say to you, some of you might want to just be able to travel, but you don't feel like you can't do that. Some of you might want to just get on your knees, play with your kids or grandkids, but you can't do that. Some of you here would like to be there at the, your kid's wedding, but you don't think that you can do it, or just you can walk your daughter down the aisle because your health's not going to be there. Think about that for a minute, right? Every person here, you have different dreams. I don't know what they are, but I'm sure that you do. So I say to you, hey, you know what? In 10, 15, 20 years from now, do you have a better chance to reach those goals if you have your health or if you don't have it? Obviously, if you have it. Obviously. Right? That's why before I feed you tonight, which I know that was the most important part, and I just wrecked the whole thing. Right? I started with this and people were like, when are we going to eat? Right? But before you eat, number one, I'm going to test you. Right? I'm going to bring some bread on the table, see who's going to eat it. Right? I'm going to be watching, just so you know. It's like, either you get a gold star or you don't. But I want to just, offer to you tonight, right? If you've never had one of those, right? It's called the Wellness Breakthrough Evaluation, right? What is that? A Wellness Breakthrough Evaluation, there's three main things there's more than three things that we do, but there's three main things that we do, is we do this thing called a nerve scan. And the reason why we do this is because 90% of your nervous system has nothing to do with pain. Can you guys say that for me? What's the percentage? 90% of your nervous system has nothing to do with pain. Nothing. Zippo, nada. Right? None. So can you just gauge your health based on how you feel and if you have pain or no pain? Yes or no? Pete, don't drop the ball on me. The answer is no. Good job, Pete. Okay? So the answer is no, for sure. Right? So that's the reason why we do that. Number two is we do an advanced biomechanical, postural analysis. And the reason why we do this is because your posture is a window to your spine and nervous system. Right? Matter of fact, they do studies when people start walking like this. I know it's not a view here, but when people are like this, right? They have this thing called the kyphosis, right? They know that their risk of having heart disease goes up by 80%. So when you have a bad posture, which a lot of people, they already know this because they always talk to me about they're like, oh yeah, I already know I have a bad posture. You see this hump right here, Dr. Jean-Guy? Nobody's ever able to take that out. I'm like, well, I can, right? If you know how. So your posture is a window to your spine and nervous system. Last but not least is we do an advanced biomechanical digital x-rays. Why do we do that? Because we want to find out if there's any damage in your spine, right? How long has the damage been there for? How much damage do you have? Can that be corrected? Can that be fixed? Let's just pretend for a minute that, one of you here tonight, which I'm not speaking this over any one of you, but let's pretend you go to the emergency right now and you're like, hey, I want you to take like a full set of x-rays of my back, right? And let's also pretend that you don't have any insurance and you have to pay by the time you walk out of there. How much do you think they'll charge you for it? Give me some numbers. 16,000. How much? Come on. Well, I want to be an x-ray tech from this point on, right? Right? People are like thousands, 2,000, 5,000. I got some record number here tonight, and I always tell people, I'm like, listen, if it was warranted, right? If it was needed, would that be okay? Right? The answer is yes. When a person comes to our office, we do this wellness breakthrough evaluation. We charge $320 to people, right? $320, which is really, in the midst of the big picture, it's really like a spit in the bucket. Think about that. But because, right, somehow, some way, somebody must care about your health somehow, some way, right? Either they care about feeding you because you're going to have a meal, or they care about your health, or maybe both, right? When people sign up, right, if you decide to have this wellness breakthrough evaluation tonight, we're going to do that for $69. $69. You'll have the whole evaluation. The evaluation consists of, we're going to do those three things, and then we're going to take you all the way to the report of findings, which is the second, it's called the doctor's report, right? So why do we do that? Why do I do that? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to tell you why, right? I'm going to bring you back here, September 14, 1982. Do you remember that? September 14, 1982. Do you remember that? Right? If you didn't remember, I started with that today, September 14, 1982. Right? When they left with my dad that day, right? I was 9 years old. My brother was 8 years old. My other brother was 7 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old. My sisters, then my mom was 35, remember? And they left with my dad there, right? I never saw my dad again, right? At the age of 40 years old, my father had a heart attack on his way to the hospital. And left behind him 5 kids. None of us were teenagers, or barely, right? And if my father would have been sitting right here tonight, right here in front of me, right, the chances are, right, 10 years prior to him getting sick, the chances are he would have seen me getting married. He would have seen his grandkids playing sports, right? He would have seen my graduation. But you know what? That never happened because, right, nobody's ever taken the time really to tell him really what health was all about. Do you follow me? Right? This is dear to me. This is dear to me. I dedicated my whole life to do what I do, right? And that's the reason why I decided that, I would extend to you this offer for this wellness breakthrough evaluation. That's the reason why, right? So now you decide to do this here. Before I feed you, I just want to make sure I'm clear because they're going to give me a hard time. My team's going to give you a hard time. I have bosses. I mean, I'm not the boss, just so you know. They boss me around all the time. But you have this thing here on the table. It's right underneath the flowers, right? Somebody here on the table, I want you to pull this right underneath the flower pot there. Pull that off the table. Who's going to do that? Each table here, you need to do that. You see this here? I need to tell you how we do this because you're going to ask me later, right? There's a QR code. If you don't know how that works, that's okay. Somebody's going to walk around and they're gonna help you out. But if you know how this QR code works, you just take your phone and you just scan this, right? Everybody here, you can just scan the QR code. It's going to take you to 2 offices. How many? 2 offices. It's either going to say Gilead Healing Center or Rassel-Daigneault Holistic Center. We have 2 offices. This is one of them. And we have another office in Frandor there in Lansing. And then you pick the office. Then you're going to put your name in. You're going to put your information in. Then you're going to schedule your appointment. And then it's going to take you to the payment page. You follow me? Right? So those are the steps that you need to take. Make sure that you pick the office. And then you're going to put your name. You're going to put the appointment. Now, if you need to change the appointment, that's okay. Just pick an appointment for tonight. Right? And then you'll be able to get to the payment page. And then you'll be all set. Do you understand that? Then if you have no idea what I said, you say, I don't know what a QR code is, that's okay. Somebody's going to be walking around. They're going to just hold your hands. We can help you out with that. Fair enough? Is that okay? Yes? Can I hear a big yes? Okay, very good. Food is coming. So here's what's going to happen. Dr. Denise, she's usually the one in charge. I mean, she's always in charge. But when I'm at my office and she's not there, I'm in charge. I'm just giving you a side note, right? But tonight she's here, so she's in charge. So she's going to be telling you guys to go and get the food. She's going to tell us how to do that. And I think we're going to go out this way and we're going to come back this way, right? So what's going to happen here is she's going to tell us which table going to do this first. And then I'm going to be praying for your food before you come in, and I'll be watching when they bring the bread, just so you know. Okay, I'm watching. And then there's one more thing that I want to do here before, right? Now listen to me here. I know you're all excited here. My food is coming, but I want to tell you this last story because this was impactful to me. How many of you here know about the story about the bison and the cows, right? If you know the story, just be quiet. Anybody knows the story? Anybody? Nobody knows the story about the cows and the bison? Nobody. Okay, well, that's amazing. I want to tell you the story, okay? Because that's a good one. Did you know that when there's a storm, right? A cow, do you know what the cow is going to do when there's a storm? The cow is going to start backing up there because, it's like, just going to wait, let's just see, right? Let's just wait and see. But if you have a bison, right, the bison's going to go right through it. And what I pray for you tonight is not to wait, because I guarantee you the storm is coming. The storm, right, is people losing their health. That's the storm. In everybody's life here, this is just like, it's just time. Every single day, if you don't do anything, it's going to get worse, right? The longer you wait with the problems you have, is it going to take less time, more time to fix it? Is it going to cost less or more money? What do you think? Every time or every time? Yeah, every time. Do you want to be a cow or you want to be a bison? Thank you, right? But you make the choice. Those choices, they're both good, right? You just need to understand there's consequence to the choice, right? For everybody. But what I pray over you here tonight is to be the bison. to get right through the storm now, right? So you have a chance to get through it, right? And to have a better life for really what you want for your life. Does that make sense? Right? And if you're not sure yet what you want for your life, just go to the nursing home and just go look at people that are in a wheelchair drooling all over themselves and they don't know who's in front of them. If you don't think that's real, just go for one day and see what happens, right? So don't be the cow, be the bison. Okay, so let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for this amazing group of people here today. Lord, I just pray that you just allow those seeds to grow in their mind and heart. And if it was not from you tonight, whatever I said, you just let it go past. Don't let it stick. But if it was from you, Lord, we just pray that not only that those seeds will grow, but they will be activated. And we're just thankful for the people that made this food tonight. And we just pray that you bless the food as it's about to nourish your body. In Jesus' name. Okay, Dr. Denise, who's going to be first? Okay, let's do that. While those guys are gone, we're going to speak behind their back. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. We're going to talk behind their back. Are you ready? So what Dr. Jean-Guy is going to do here before I go home, because some of you might be sitting there and you're like, hey, I've got some questions. So I want to be able to answer a few questions before I leave. So if you have some question while those folks there are gone out there to get some food, I can answer your question. If you don't have any question, I'm just going to go home. You just eat. James got a question. Oh, he doesn't have a question. He wants me to go home. Sharon's got a question. Go ahead. You do? It's not for the people? Yeah. Is that a health question? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. I got you. You just need to tell the lady here when you leave. Make sure you tell her what I just said, because she might not have been here before. Okay, any questions? Dean. Yes, what is your question? So I want you to be a little bit, if you want me to answer this question, I mean, this is a big subject here and we can teach for days on supplements and vitamin. Are you just talking about vitamin D? Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it should be taken with fat. So when you eat, it should be with food. It should not be on an empty stomach. And most vitamin D, when they sell it, they're also going to sell it into a fat base, right? So they already put it in that environment so it can be absorbed. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, okay, questions? You should have one every year. I'm just kidding. What I said was, I didn't say that there's anything bad about hip replacement. I just said that when people are taking anti-acid medication, one of the side effects is osteoporosis. And it makes a person more prone to have a hip replacement. That's what I said, right? So I'm not a big fan of hip replacement if you don't need to have one, right? Obviously, there's some people, they waited too long and it might be necessary. Go ahead, Laura. I think you already asked me a question you know the answer to. So when people are taking, Laura's question is when people are taking Ozempic for quote unquote for diabetes, or they're taking it for weight loss, and people do lose weight, but there's a cost, right? Those medication of what they do and the side effect. If you just listen to the advertising and you look at all the side effect, I don't know if it's worth. And it's not just the side effect while you're taking the drugs, but it's the post side effect that people have, right? Long term. But as you understand, is people want to have a quick reward, right? For long-term consequence. So I'm not a fan of it. I think there's other ways to do it that are as effective, right? It's just a matter of being committed. And I think people can definitely do it. for sure. Yes, Sharon, what is your question, honey? Can I share? So Sharon's question is, can a diabetic should be on a gluten-free diet? I do believe that most people should stay away from gluten to begin with, regardless of the condition they have. And the reason for that is because most of the grain in this country are genetically modified, right? So soy, corn, wheat, they're genetically modified. And the body doesn't really know what to do with that. So gluten is not a health food for sure. People should stay away from it. Oatmeal, there's no gluten in oats. The problem, though, is the farmers, they grow oats and wheat in the same field. So if you buy oats, you should be buying oats that hasn't been refined, like still cut oats. It takes 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes to cook, and it should be gluten-free. That should be the goal. Okay, what about Bob? Is there any question at your table before I go? Yes? Who's going to ask? You will? Okay. You got bone on bone. Is that repairable? So maybe a better question is, so there's people that they've been told they have bone on bone and they don't really have bone on bone, right? I mean, there is such thing truly as bone on bone. There's people that have bone on bone in my office that they have zero pain and they're completely functional, right? So in the world of regenerative medicine, right, there's ways that you can regenerate joints, and that can definitely be done. There's many things that can be done before that, right? But if you go see the orthopedic guy, they use the term bone on bone for shoulders and knees, and many times when you take an x-rays, you don't have bone on bone. This is just different level of degeneration. You follow me? Right? So there is people that have bone on bone, but yes, the answer is there's many things that can be done for that. Not on its own, but there's many things that can be done for it. There's many level of treatment that can be done to regenerate a joint and to make a person functional. Laser therapy, light. I did not touch on that. Which question you want? What do you want me to talk about? Are you talking about soft wave? Oh, this is not a light therapy. It's called acoustic sound wave. Acoustic sound wave has the ability to stimulate your own stem cells to regenerate a joint. Yes. So in the natural world, there's some machine. That's one of them that it has the ability to bring in new beds of cells and to regenerate a joint with your own stem cells. Soft wave therapy will do that. 100%. Joanne, do you have any question, Joanne? Robert is the only one asking questions? Okay. Yes, dear. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah, 100%. Yes. There's many things that can be done. If you don't have a complete tear, right, the body has the ability to heal itself, so it will be able to repair that. But you have to be mechanically sound in a gravity environment and having the right raw material to be able to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead there. Yes. Yes.
And they're talking about, my ortho doctor's talking about giving me the 2 tests of the blocker.
Yes.
And then giving me them, as long as they work, giving me the final block that will last 6 to 12 months.
Yes. A rhizotomy.
Yes.
Yes.
So is that a good idea? Because I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And it is affecting my legs now.
Mm-hmm. So without an evaluation, I don't have an answer for that, but there's many things that can be done for people that have chronic pain before you get to the rhizotomy, which they burn the nerve. That's what they do. Yeah. Sometimes there might be some value to that, but again, you're not the first line of attack is always to try to get to the cause of the problem, right? What's causing it. So many times pain will be amplified when there's not enough motion in a joint, right? So when you're improving motion in a joint, when people have scoliosis, right? The scoliosis is a curvature of the spine, and it doesn't mean that those joints are not moving, right? So I have this lady right now that has a scoliosis, and I made a brace for her, and since she's been wearing the brace, she's got zero pain, and she couldn't function before, right? So there's ways that you can make a person more functional. You can improve their lifestyle and how they feel with other means. It just depends of like which direction that a person wants to take it.
Scoliosis is not as common on
Yeah.
degenerative disc disease. Right? So sometimes I see
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, is there's any more questions? Yes. What's the question? If a person has a concussion, is that what you mean? And specifically nutrition, is that what you're talking about? Uh, there's many of them. The minerals are probably at the top of the list. Magnesium is one of them. The B vitamins are another one. The B vitamins, the essential fatty acid are also really important, right? Those are the ones that there is a certain form of turmeric that has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, but many of them don't. But if they're bioavailable, depending what they're connected to, has the ability to do that. So those are some of the things that can help with that. You bet. Yes, there. Yeah, we do have those. Yes. One more? One more. I'm listening. Can't wait to hear this one, can't you? Yes. And what's the question? No. I think that people should be eating food. And there's some people they might not do well with some of those food. I agree with that. But not necessarily all of them. Yeah. Yeah, when they do PET scan on those people, they see their brain shrinking at a very fast pace. I didn't say that. I'm just telling you that when a person is in a coma and they do PET scan of them, right? They see their brain that was their gray matter will start shrinking. Yep. Okay.